Hey, it's Leo. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing queer shoutout book reviews and a wrap-up catch-up, since it's been a hot minute again since I filmed. November was a good month, but it felt like a hard month, just overwhelmed with lots of things, with work and health questions, and really just overwhelmed by the cruelty and crap in the world as well. I just really don't want the bullies and the fascists to win or make people miserable. And related to all of that, I just kind of struggled with low energy through November, but I think I've turned a corner. So hopefully things will go up from here. Also, NaNoWriMo was in November, but because of everything that I just said, and I don't know, it didn't work for me. I wrote about 3,400 words and petered out within the first week, and I am okay with that. So with my novel, Draft 1, I completed last year in NaNoWriMo, and then throughout the year I've been tinkering with outline and concept and so forth, and I've shifted it so that it is, instead of a mystery genre, it is now literary fiction. So the same story, but different lens and different tone, etc. And I really like that, but it's just been hard to get it written. And I really want to tell the story of these characters. So hopefully December and following months will be better for me in terms of writing. Did any of you do NaNoWriMo? How did it go for you? I hope it was a successful, enjoyable experience, however you define that. I also felt like in October, November, I had a real reading slump, and I will get to that more in a little bit later as I'm reviewing my books. I can't remember where I heard it, but one of the things that I was kind of thinking about this last month or two as I have not been meeting the goals that I set for myself and not been feeling great is that how I'm feeling today is not necessarily going to be how I am feeling tomorrow, so that I don't have to be stuck in whatever is going on for me right now. And so that's been true, and I think that was helpful, and I think I've turned a corner. So here's to all of us finding joy and hope and love and good books. I also want to say thank you to all of you who have left kind words of support and encouragement and affirmation, either in comments or in shout outs or in tweets. It really means a lot to me, and I appreciate all of you so very much, and look forward to hopefully being able to catch more of your content and engage more in comments and so forth. Please do know that I just deeply appreciate each of you, so thank you. So in this video, I'll be wrapping up books that I've read through September, October, and November. This is a catch-up video. Some of these books I've already covered in either vlogs or previous shout-out book reviews, so I won't cover those books, but the rest that I've read, I would like to share with you. So including the ones that I've covered in other videos, I read 10 books in September, 4 in October, and 6 in November. So, that's great. It just wasn't what I was hoping for. I also just want to do this to have fun, but I also want to meet my goal of 100 books by the end of the year. We shall see. I'm gonna do 2 videos in one, basically. So I'm gonna do my queer book reviews for shout out in this video, and I'm gonna start off with those, and then I'm going to continue with the rest of the wrap up. Shout out is a volunteer-driven, non-monetized digital outlet for the sharing of news, business, arts, politics, entertainment, etc., geared towards the needs of the LGBTQIA+ community in the Pacific Northwest. And I'm thrilled to be among many great contributors on Shout Out, which you can find on Facebook at ShoutoutPDX. Also, before I get to the books, I'd like to do my nonprofit lift up. With each video, I like to lift up a different nonprofit that's doing good in the world. I'll make a donation, and I'll encourage you to like, share, follow, donate, or so as you are inspired. I definitely appreciate the reminder of all of the people who are working to change the world to be a better place. With this video, I'm donating to Indigenous Climate Action, or ICA. I'll read to you a little bit about them. They are an Indigenous-led organization guided by a diverse group of Indigenous knowledge keepers, water protectors, and land defenders from communities and regions. They believe that Indigenous peoples' rights and knowledge systems are critical to developing solutions to the climate crisis and achieving climate justice. ICA works on connecting and supporting Indigenous communities to reinforce their place as leaders, driving climate change, solutions for today and tomorrow. By providing communities with knowledge and resources, they aim to inspire a new generation of Indigenous climate leaders building solutions centered around their inherent rights and cultures. So I'll make a donation to Indigenous Climate Action, and I encourage you to check them out. So now let's get to some queer book reviews for shout out. I want to start with a 5-star read that has an asexual main character, Ilatsue by Darcy Little Badger. This is a YA magical realism mystery. I'll read a little bit of the synopsis. Imagine an America very similar to our own. It's got homework, best friends, and pistachio ice cream. There are some differences. This America has been shaped dramatically by the magic, monsters, knowledge, and legends of its peoples, those indigenous and those not. Some of those forces are charmingly everyday, like the ability to make an orb of light appear or travel across the world through the rings of fungi. But other forces are less charming and should never see the light of day. Ilatsue lives in this slightly stranger America. She can raise the ghost of dead animals, a skill passed down through generations of her Lipan Apache family. Her beloved cousin has just been murdered in a town that wants no prying eyes, but she is going to do more than pry. The picture-perfect facade of Willoughby masks gruesome secrets, and she will rely on her wits, skills, and friends to tear off the mask and protect her family. I loved this book, definitely a 5-star read for me. The world was so rich, the story was told so beautifully, the characters were interesting, fun, dynamic. I really enjoyed getting into the world and hearing their story. This is a YA detective story that really beautifully weaves together some of the stories of the Lipan Apache community, gives you the trope of best friends as amateur sleuths. Definitely recommend Ilatsue by Darcy Little Badger. The next book that I'd like to review is Butter Honey Pig Bread by Francesca Ekwuasi. I added this one to my TBR after Sean the Book Maniac's bite-sized book chat with Bill from Nairobi, which I'll link down below. Butter Honey Pig Bread tells the story of 3 Nigerian women, a mother and her 2 twin daughters. Each of the women gets a perspective in the novel, and the story spans several centuries. The story spans several decades and has flashbacks and so forth. It centers around the reunion of these 3 after there's been several years of estrangement. There's a little bit of a touch of magical realism as the mother, Kambere Nachi, believes that she is this Obanji, which is a non-human spirit that plagues the family with misfortune. And there's other elements of that as well that I'll let you discover through the story. Her twin daughters, Taye and Kende, undergo a trauma in their childhood. So there will be, I would advise you to check out the trigger warnings for this. That trauma divides the family and really drives a wedge between these 2 sisters that were previously inseparable. The book begins as they're adults, when they all come back together. It's a really powerful story of family, of sisterhood, of reconciliation and woundedness, and all of those sorts of things. So I highly recommend it. Great representation of these Nigerian women, of Taye as a lesbian character, and the story of this family and what they go through. So definitely recommend it. I will link to the bite-sized book chat down below so that you can also check out Bill and Sean's discussion of this book. Another 4.5-star review for the Queer Shoutout book review is Less by Andrew Sean Greer. This is a totally different tone from the other books. This is the story of Arthur Less, who is an author and was dating this man for 9 years, kind of on the side, and that man then got engaged to someone else. But Arthur Less received the wedding invitation and did not want to just go there and, cheer on this ex-boyfriend of his, especially with all of the friends and so forth that would be there. So what he decides to do is to accept all of these invitations and make basically an around the world trip to go to all of these different places. And it's funny and charming. Well, let me read you this piece. Arthur Less will almost fall in love in Paris, almost fall to his death in Berlin, barely escape to a Moroccan ski chalet from a Saharan sandstorm, accidentally book himself as the only writer in residence at a Christian retreat center in southern India, An encounter on a desert island in the Arabian Sea, the last person on Earth he wants to face. Somewhere in there he will turn 50. Through it all, there is his first love, and there is his last. Because despite all of these mishaps, missteps, misunderstandings, and mistakes, Les is, above all, a love story. So I enjoyed this. I enjoyed this character, his story arc, his growth. I enjoyed the mystery of kind of some of the what is going on here with the love story. It wasn't a 5-star read for me, but I would give it a 4.5 star, and I definitely recommend it. I think you would enjoy it, probably. This next one is more complicated. It's the last one on the Queer Shoutout book review section of this video. It does feature a lesbian protagonist. I'm hesitating because I really enjoyed the first part of it. I loved it. I was laughing out loud. I really appreciated the wordplay and the writing and the concept, and I didn't like the ending. But I know that I am more fussy about how characters treat one another. I don't want to give anything away, but there were, and I haven't even told you the name of the book yet, but there were just some bits of cruelty that, like minor cruelty, not like, locking someone up in a dungeon cruelty, but it was unnecessary, and so I found the ending unsatisfying. So I would love to know if you've read this book and what you think of it. And the book is The Liar's Dictionary by Ellie Williams. So this is a story told in 2 timelines. There's a Victorian lexicographer, Peter Winsworth, who really is like seen as, or not seen, he's pretty much invisible to his colleagues, and meets this woman that he falls for. Then in the current time frame, we have Mallory, who is an underpaid intern who's working in that same dictionary publishing house. In the present day, Mallory every day gets these threats that someone is going to blow up the building. And so for the first part of the story, like, her job is basically just answering the phone and taking this death threat, and there's not much else for her to do. But then she starts, she's asked by the owner to then start looking for these fake words and definitions that have been inserted in the dictionary, because he's trying to then put it online and doesn't want to put online these fake words that our Victorian lexicographer has been inserting. There's also a little bit of a storyline where Mallory, who is a lesbian, is not really out, and so there's some conversation about that. So that may be something that either bugs you or that you enjoy, that commentary on the dynamic of an out and a non-out partner. Basically, I'm putting this in there because I think it's interesting. I didn't hate it. And I would love to know if you've read it and what you thought of it, because it definitely, I have thoughts. I have lots of thoughts, and I can't say them all because, again, I don't want to spoil the ending. So that would be The Liar's Dictionary by Ellie Williams. That's the book that also put me into a little bit of a reading slump, so, maybe approach with caution. But many of you have bolder hearts than I do. I was really having a hard time then getting back into, really wanting to dive into reading. And then I found the read-along for Going Postal, hosted by Scott at Gunpowder Fiction and Plot, Read, Write, Create with Katya, Rosie Cockshut, and Sina at Beating Around the Books. So I still have to watch the wrap-up. I didn't do a good job of following along, but I did read it, and the book, that fixed so many things that were wrong with my reading frustrations. So Going Postal is by Terry Pratchett. It is one of the Discworld books. It's so good. I give this book 5 stars. So our character is Moist von Lipwig, and he is basically a con man, and he's been found guilty. And the book starts off with he is on death row in this city of Ankh-Morpork, and he is hung, but not quite all the way. And he is offered this choice of taking the role of Postmaster General. Lord Vetinari gives him this choice. Moist is like, well, what kind of choice is it? It's either like death or become postmaster. And so he accepts. Turns out that the post office is in complete disarray. They basically have stopped delivering the letters, and so the letters are just like tucked and fill all the rooms, and there's hardly any room for people to have their offices or anything like that. The staff are hilarious. Moist is really kind of going to work an angle on this, but then the story goes from there. There also then is this rival. It's kind of like a telegraph thing. It's the Clacks. And there's a guy in charge of that business is not a good man. And so there's a great kind of like challenge between those two. And then there's a potential love interest. It was so good. I can't remember if this is the first Terry Pratchett I've read. I think I've read maybe one other, but it's been years. And now I'm wondering why I haven't read these sooner. I know my mom's been raving about Terry Pratchett for years. So maybe I just by default was still Teenage Rebellion and not reading the books that she recommended. I just found the story amazing, the writing so good. It's funny. The characters are rich and lovable and ridiculous, and you're rooting for them, and it's got this theme of hope, and I highly recommend it. Please check it out. Going Postal by Terry Pratchett. The last book I actually read in November, I'm totally not going in order. What is order? Was recommended by several of you on your different channels, and that is The Trials of Morgan Crow, the Nevermore book number 1 by Jessica Townsend. This is a middle grade book, so definitely lower stakes, different tone and storytelling pace. I gave it 5 stars, and it was what I needed, and it was just a beautiful story. I loved it so much that I immediately went on to read book 2, which was then in December, so you don't get to hear about that one. And I finished that, and now I'm on book 3. So I think it's safe to say that I enjoyed myself reading this. In The Trials of Morgan Crow, Morgan is a cursed girl. She's about to turn 11, and she knows that she will die when she turns 11. And that's just how she's been brought up, and that she's cursed, and that her curse, like all of the surrounding town, anything that bad happens, it's because of her curse. And so she's spends her whole life just knowing she's going to die at 11, and that she has to apologize all the time for the bad apple harvest or someone's ice skating fall, etc., because it's her fault. She's rescued at 9 p.m. before she's supposed to die at midnight by Jupiter North, who takes her to this other land that she never knew about. It's this magical city called Nevermore. I guess I should say the whole world of Morgan Crow and Nevermore is kind of like magical world, where there's large talking animals and people with magical gifts called knacks and so forth. So that's the world that this book is set in. Jupiter wants to submit Morgan as a candidate for the Wondrous Society, which is a organization in Nevermore that has a school but also has this like professional organization that's the most respected in the community. And book 1 is the story of her trials to get into the Wondrous Society, which is basically a year-long process. I loved this book. I thought the world was really interesting and really fun. I loved the characters. I think the author does a really good job of having the characters be dynamic and interesting, but also, so like Jupiter North is the like eccentric, smart guy that has ginger hair and a big beard and is kind of wacky, but doesn't feel cardboard. And Morgan Crow is the glum girl that dresses all in black and knows she's cursed, but it has more depth and is more interesting than that. I love that too, that it doesn't hinge on like stupid miscommunications. There's a point in book 2, which obviously I'm not going to go into, but Jupiter North, who then is her patron, basically her guardian then as well, discovers her doing something that is maybe not okay. And I feel like a lot of books would rely on the like, take that, you're in trouble, blow it up, not listen, and then that's a plot point. But it really like makes you not appreciate that relationship between the two characters. And the book didn't do that. You see the moment where he sees her doing the thing that could lead to that miscommunication, and instead they have a conversation about it. It was remarkable. So, there's definitely like in the first part of the book, we hear about her childhood in this place where she's considered to be this cursed child, and that's definitely unpleasant, and there's definitely unpleasant stuff that she has to face in Nevermore. And it's not that everything's perfect, but I appreciated the dynamics that didn't rely on stupid tropes of misunderstandings and lack of connection between the characters. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. I also thought it was really interesting that the book really approaches the topic of immigration and documentation. Undocumented immigrants. Morgan in Nevermore is undocumented, and that there's this threat of deportation that hovers over her as well. I thought that was handled well. Again, I love the characters, I love the story. It made me happy. So I definitely recommend. I mean, if you don't want something that's a middle grade or YA, it won't be for you. If you want something with murder rooms, I guess, don't read this book. I don't know. I think you'll enjoy it. I did. 5 stars. So there you go. It's funny, I talked about a reading slump, but after I read Going Postal, then I read another 5-star book. So that was The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo, and I had mentioned it in my previous video where I did a prompt that I'd been tagged in by Kazanet Always Doing. And I read the first few lines of The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo. And then so many of you said, you should read that book. So then I read the book, and I did it on audiobook. Read by the author, which I highly recommend. It was so good and so powerful. Content warnings for some parent-child kind of tension. I also appreciated though, like where it went and how it was handled. The Poet X is about a sophomore in high school, Xiomara, who is living in Harlem and coming to terms with both her mother's religious fervor and her new attraction to this boy in her bio class, and her connection with her own twin brother, navigating the world of newly into high school. The language was so good. It was so beautiful. I recommend the audiobook version of it. Xiomara finds that writing poetry really is a powerful form of expression for her to navigate all of this, and she gets invited into the poetry club at the school. There's complications about that because she also is supposed to be in confirmation for her catechism class at the Catholic Church. Just a really interesting dynamic, rich in cultural world. I just thought it was really good, and I definitely recommend it. Another book I read was Jade City, The Greenbone Saga #1 by Fonda Lee. This book was recommended lots of places, and I guess the author lives here in Portland, the same city that I live in. I know that I heard her on Writing Excuses, a podcast that she was a guest on, and they also reference her a lot regarding the gift she has in terms of world building, which I definitely agree. Jade City is, I've heard referenced as a cross between The Godfather and Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, and I definitely agree with that description. Jade City is set in an Asian-inspired fantasy world in which Jade imparts magical powers or strength to people of a certain bloodline, but to other people it doesn't have an effect, and to another group of people it acts sort of like a meth, I think, some kind of powerful drug that's very addictive, but also very destructive. The blurb here has this sentence, which I think is really helpful to kind of give you an idea of it. It says, Jade City is the first novel in an epic trilogy about family, honor, and those who live and die by the ancient laws of blood and jade. That'll be teaser enough for you to decide if you want to read it, maybe. I gave it 4 stars because it's definitely, like I said, great world building, really interesting storytelling, great concept. For me, what I struggled with was just there were too many straight cis men in straight cis men are wonderful, but I think there were 2 or 3 named characters that had any kind of decent role in the book, and much of the scenes were just full of men and men fighting, men negotiating, men making political decisions, and it wasn't for me. There was one gay character that also, at first I was like, yay, and then his story arc really frustrated me too. I don't know where it's going to go in book 2 and book 3. I may not read book 2 or book 3, but I wasn't excited with where it was headed at the end of book 1. If this story concept sounds good to you, I definitely recommend you check it out. It was a good book. It just wasn't necessarily for me, so I give it 4 stars. Have you read this? I'd love to know what you thought. Okay, I want to jump to a couple nonfiction that I've read in the last couple months. The first one was Freedom is a Constant Struggle, Ferguson, Palestine, and the Foundations of a Movement by Angela Davis. This was first published in 2015. I read this one shortly after finishing The Fire Next Time by James Baldwin, and so it was a harder read for me, but it's tough to compare the two. Freedom is a Constant Struggle is not as easily digestible, but just as smart and important and powerful. Davis's book explores complex political realities of our current age that include global security consortiums and the conflict in Palestine, concepts that are kind of complex and have felt really complicated for me to try to grasp. I think she does an amazing job in articulating this. It's a series of essays and speeches, so partly as she's going to these different places and giving the speeches, some of the facts and general concepts are repeated, which I think is really helpful because this is not stuff that we talk about regularly in terms of which global security agencies are getting contracts in schools as well as in Palestine, right? So I thought that was well done. I like this bit from the synopsis. She illuminates the connections between struggles against state violence and oppression throughout history and around the world, reflecting on the importance of Black feminism, intersectionality, and prison abolitionism for today's struggle. She discusses the legacy of previous liberation strategies from the Black freedom movement to the South African anti-apartheid movement, and highlights connections of today's struggles against state terror from Ferguson to Palestine. She challenges us to imagine and build the movement for human liberation, and I think really emphasizes the need for us to learn more about these concepts and work together and work in solidarity with those who are oppressed around the world. So I definitely recommend it, 5 stars. And I'm also going to include in the comments section, in the description box below, a list of some of the books that she recommended throughout the book, because I think that is also a rich resource and I'd love to share that with all of you. So have you read this book? I'd love to know what you thought of it. The next nonfiction book that I read was Playing in the Dark, Whiteness and the Literary Imagination by Toni Morrison. I give this one 4 stars. I really appreciated her analysis, but I wasn't as familiar with a lot of the works that she was diving into, so I missed a lot of the deeper points. She really dives into Poe, Melville, Cather, and Hemingway, which I just either haven't read or it's been a million years since I've read them. She definitely has a lot of good insight, and I need to read more Morrison, clearly, but I appreciated her review of American literature in kind of the context of kind of like white guys trying to justify their existence. How does they describe it? Individualism, masculinity, and the insistence on innocence and obsession with death and hell, are kind of as a response to the Africanist presence. Really rich conversation here, and I do recommend it, especially if you're familiar with the works of Poe, Hemingway, Cather, and Melville. The next book that I want to just mention that I read was The Great Mistake by Mary Roberts Reinhardt. I read this with the read along with Say Kevy and was so glad to be introduced to Mary Roberts Reinhardt. The Great Mistake is a great detective novel. I really truly appreciated the way the story was crafted. I'm so glad that Kevy picked this book. It was a great mystery. I really appreciated the pacing. The characters were interesting. I was surprised by who the killer was, but also it made sense. So it wasn't just like some out of left field, you know what I mean, when the authors do that. I kind of worried that it would feel like out of date and clunky and hard to read since it was written in 1940. Wasn't at all. It was an easy read. It was a fun read, a page turner, and I recommend it for you. And I look forward to reading more by Mary Roberts Reinhardt. You've heard of it probably before, and that's Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. And that was, a winner. And I gave it 4.5 stars. So it's a fantasy, it's hard to describe, but it's about this house that has 2 occupants and a lot of tides, and the 2 characters are Piranesi, who's our protagonist, and then this other person who's in the house as well, who he calls the other, and helps with different science experiments. So I won't say more than that because either you've read it or you should discover it in the reading of it. But I enjoyed it, and I gave it 4.5 stars, and I thought it was clever and interesting. So there you go. The next book that I read that I believe was recommended by Eric Carl Anderson was Autumn by Ali Smith. So this is the first Ali Smith that I've read. In my rating, I gave it 4.5 stars, and I'm in recollection back, maybe I'll give it 4 stars. So it's the story of Daniel, who is about a century old, and then Elizabeth, who is a young woman. She goes to visit him while he's in a rest home, and we kind of have a little bit of a hopping back and forth of the narrative structure. Okay, so it's been a little while since I've read this, so some of the details are escaping me, but also it's kind of either post-Brexit or Brexit vote is also very relevant to this. I really loved the relationship between Daniel and Elizabeth. I just thought that was so powerful and beautiful. I really appreciated that. The reason I gave it 4.5 stars instead of 5, where there was a couple of times where I don't know if she was being poetic. I guess she plays with Ali Smith, the author, like plays with words. But there were a couple parts where, to me personally, it felt like she just got a little carried away, and it was repetitive. Like there was like this long section where it was like, in the city this, in the city that, in the city. And I was just like, okay, we get it. It's a poem where every line starts with in the city. I was like, can we just be done now? so I didn't love it all, but I really enjoyed it, and I will read more Ali Smith. So I'd love to know what your thoughts are on Autumn or any of the seasonal quartet. Oh, we made it to the last one. So since it's been so long since I've done a wrap up, this is actually a book that I read on September 1st. I did it in audio and started it and finished it on the same day. That was Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata. So many of you have either heard of this book or read this book. It's the story of a Tokyo resident, Keiko, who works in a convenience store. I'll just read a little bit of the synopsis. It says, Keiko has never fit in, neither in her family nor in school, but when at the age of 18 she begins working at the Hiromachi branch of Smile Mart, she finds peace and purpose in her life. In the store, unlike anywhere else, she understands the rules of social interaction. Many are laid out line by line in the store's manual, and she does her best to copy the dress, mannerisms, and speech of her colleagues, playing the part of a normal person excellently, more or less. Managers come and go, but Keiko stays at the store for 18 years. It's almost hard to tell where the store ends and she begins. Keiko is very happy, but the people close to her, from her family to her coworkers, increasingly pressure her to find a husband and to start a proper career, prompting her to take desperate action. So I gave this one 4 stars, and I'm tempted to maybe give it 3.5, but I'll probably stick with 4. The concept, I love the setup. I loved the character Keiko, but the desperate action that she takes involves this other character that just felt very flat and one note to me and felt like a caricature. And I worried that then he made her kind of feel more like a caricature when, like, before he was introduced, I felt like she just had so much more depth. But I know that there are definitely like societal pressures and family pressures to live up to gender norms, and that this, is getting at some of that. AJ Dunn of AJ Dunn Reads and Writes and I had a great comment back and forth about this, and so I appreciated it. It just didn't go quite where I wanted it to, so I don't love it, but I'm glad I read it, and I would love to know your thoughts on it. So the other 5 books I read in this 3-month period are again covered in vlogs or the other Queer Shoutout book review, and that was The Fire Next Time by James Baldwin, Center Center by James Whiteside, The Guncle by Stephen Rowley, Last Night at the Telegraph Club by Melinda Lowe, and 450 from Paddington by Agatha Christie. So if you're interested in my thoughts on those books, check out my other videos. That'd be great. All right, we made it. That's all the books I read through the month of November. And now we're in December, and my goal, I need to read 10 more books in this month in order to meet my goal for 2021 of 100 books. And I think I can do it. I hope I can do it. So we shall see. I also intend to keep plotting, poking along and getting my novel written. I really want to do that, but there are other things that sometimes take up time too. I also want to participate in the Hogfather Read Along, which is being hosted by Katya at Read Write Create and Scott at Gunpowder Fiction and Plot, and the Christie's Missing Readathon hosted by Say Kebby, Berna's Bookish Adventures, and Naomi's Bookshelf. So I think it's going to be a good rest of the month. I really hope that you all have a wonderful December and that you find hope and joy and peace and energy and all the good things. So anyway, thanks again for watching. I really truly appreciate you. You're all amazing. And until next time, happy reading.